Think about the bustling city of San Francisco. It's a massive, dense metropolis that is currently home to roughly 800,000 people. Now, I want you to close your eyes and imagine every single person in that city just vanishing. Entire neighborhoods, streets, and homes instantly silenced. We aren't talking about a devastating population decline over the course of a decade, or a year, or even a month. I want you to imagine that entire population being wiped off the map in a matter of seconds. It sounds like the unbelievable plot of a Hollywood disaster movie, but on January 23, 1556, this unimaginable scenario became a terrifying reality. In the blink of an eye, an estimated 830,000 people lost their lives in a single catastrophic geological event. To this day, it holds the dark title of the deadliest earthquake in human history. Yet, despite a death toll that challenges human comprehension, it is rarely discussed in Western history books. It remains a massive historical blind spot. But here is the most chilling part of the story. This wasn't actually the most powerful earthquake ever recorded. It wasn't a world-breaking tremor that ripped tectonic plates to shreds. Rather, it was a perfect, tragic storm. It was a lethal, unavoidable collision of unique geology, incredibly vulnerable architecture, and the absolute worst possible timing imaginable. How does the Earth swallow hundreds of thousands of people in a single night? To understand how an earthquake could wipe out a population roughly the size of modern-day Amsterdam, we have to travel back to the height of the Ming Dynasty and look beneath the surface of the soil they called home. The year is 1556. To understand the sheer scale of this tragedy, we first need to look at the world these people inhabited. At this time, the Ming Dynasty was an absolute global superpower. It was wealthy, technologically advanced, and densely populated. With the Jia Emperor sitting on the throne, central China was overseeing a period of massive agricultural development. And the heart of this agricultural boom was a highly unique environment known as the Loess Plateau, or Huangtu Plateau. Millions of people in Shanxi and its neighboring provinces were drawn to this region for one very specific reason: the soil. Loess is a fine, wind-blown, silty sediment. It is incredibly fertile, which made it an absolute paradise for farming and drew massive populations to the Yellow River Basin. But this unique soil didn't just dictate what the people of Shanxi ate, it dictated exactly how they lived. Because traditional building materials like wood were remarkably scarce, and the Loess soil was exceptionally easy to dig into, the locals got creative. Both peasants and wealthy families alike carved elaborate cave dwellings directly into the sides of the region's hills and cliffs. These traditional earthen caves were called yaodongs, and they were highly practical. Yaodongs were perfectly insulated, keeping families comfortably cool during the blistering summers and warm through the freezing winters. But there was a fatal flaw hidden in the dirt. While Loess is absolutely brilliant for insulation, it has almost zero structural integrity when subjected to shear forces. Without realizing it, the people of Shanxi were living inside millions of fragile earthen traps. It was the dead of winter. The vast majority of the population was fast asleep, buried deep inside the presumed safety of their warm yaodongs. This timing, striking when millions were indoors and completely off guard, was the first massive contributor to the unbelievable death toll. There had been subtle warnings. According to historical records, the water in local wells had begun to bubble mysteriously in the days prior, and animals acted erratically. But right at midnight, the true rupture occurred. The earthquake struck with its epicenter near Huaxian, Weinan, and Huayan. The sheer force was so devastating that in Huaxian, every single building and home collapsed. The localized death toll in that specific county alone was over 50%. We actually have primary sources that describe this exact night. The Annals of Shanxi recorded the terrifying reality of the landscape shifting. Mountains and rivers changed places, and roads were destroyed. In some places, the ground suddenly rose up and formed new hills, or it sank abruptly and became new valleys. And then came the secondary disasters. Fires broke out from overturned hearths inside the collapsed dwellings, burning uncontrollably for days. Rivers literally reversed their flow or were completely dammed by massive landslides, causing catastrophic flash floods in the pitch black. The historical accounts sound like mythological poetry, mountains rising, rivers reversing, but modern geology tells us exactly what happened, and it is just as terrifying as the myths. Modern seismologists estimate that the 1556 Shanxi earthquake was an 8.0 on the moment magnitude scale. Now, to be perfectly clear, we've certainly recorded stronger earthquakes in modern history, like the massive 9.5 magnitude quake that struck Chile in 1960. But it wasn't just the sheer power of the Shanxi quake that made it so deadly. It was its specific depth and location that made it uniquely lethal. The hardest-hit region sits directly on the Wei River Basin, which is a massive, highly active rift valley. What happened beneath the surface that night was a terrifying example of a geological concept called normal faulting. Imagine the Earth's crust being slowly, relentlessly stretched apart. Immense tension builds up over centuries until the rock finally fails and a massive section of the Earth violently drops downward. But the absolute most crucial scientific takeaway from this disaster, the exact reason the death toll skyrocketed into the hundreds of thousands, comes down to a phenomenon known as soil liquefaction. Remember that fertile Loess soil we talked about earlier? While it was mostly dry on the very top, there was a remarkably high water table lurking right underneath. When those immense seismic waves rolled through the Earth, the intense vibration caused the solid sediment to behave exactly like a liquid. This specific science directly explains the unimaginable human tragedy. Because of soil liquefaction, the hillsides didn't just shake, they literally melted. The Yaodongs, those millions of earthen caves where families were peacefully sleeping, didn't just collapse, they completely dissolved. Hundreds of thousands of people were instantly suffocated under millions of tons of heavy, wet dirt. Because the earth flowed like water, there were no air pockets left behind. There was simply no escape. When the sun finally rose on January 24th, the geography of central China had been permanently altered. But the true horror was only just beginning. When we talk about the terrifying statistic of 830,000 people losing their lives, it is vital to understand that the earthquake itself did not kill all of them in that initial midnight shaking. The complete destruction of homes and infrastructure in the absolute dead of winter meant that hundreds of thousands of people who survived the initial collapse were suddenly left without shelter. In the brutal weeks that followed, countless men, women, and children died from exposure, freezing temperatures, and untreated injuries. And then came the famine. The violent shaking of the earth had entirely wiped out the region's vital agricultural stores. With the local roads completely destroyed or buried under landslides, the Ming government simply could not send relief supplies in time to save those who were starving. Severe famine and the subsequent inevitable spread of disease claimed the rest of the victims. In a matter of months, an entire generation of central China was effectively wiped off the map. So, you might be wondering, how do we know so many specific details about a disaster that wiped out almost everyone who experienced it? We know because of the brave individuals left behind, like a man named Qin Keida. Qin Keida was a local scholar and government official who miraculously survived the devastating earthquake. Amidst the unbelievable grief and total ruin of his community, he took it upon himself to meticulously record the event for history. He carefully documented the staggering death tolls and the dramatic, permanent geographical changes that had scarred his homeland. But perhaps his most incredible contribution was to the field of early seismology. Writing in the dark aftermath of the disaster, Qin Keida produced what might be the very first recorded earthquake safety advice in human history. Reflecting on the horrific collapse of the earth and caves, he wrote these exact words. At the very beginning of the earthquake, people indoors should not go out immediately. Just crouch down and wait. Even if the nest is collapsed, some eggs in it may still be kept intact. Chinkada's words were a desperate plea to future generations, and eventually, the world started to listen. In the direct aftermath of the 1556 tragedy, the Ming Dynasty witnessed a massive, fundamental shift in how they built their communities. The survivors had learned a brutal, unforgettable lesson. Both the government and the local populations realized that building with heavy stone and rigidly packed earth in these highly active earthquake-prone regions was a recipe for absolute disaster. To adapt, they turned to nature's more forgiving materials, leading to the widespread adoption of wood and bamboo. The reason for this architectural shift comes down to basic physics. Wood and bamboo are highly flexible materials. Think about it. When an earthquake strikes and the ground begins to violently heave and roll, a rigid stone building fiercely resists that kinetic energy. It fights the moving earth until the stone finally cracks, snaps, and brutally crushes the inhabitants trapped inside. But a wooden or bamboo-framed structure acts entirely differently. It literally bends and sways in harmony with the massive shear forces of the earth. Rather than breaking, it absorbs and distributes the shock. This crucial architectural adaptation meant that even if a building sustained heavy damage, it wouldn't immediately collapse into a deadly pile of rubble. This single pivot in engineering saved countless lives in the subsequent centuries. Today, humanity is equipped with vastly superior technology. We construct soaring megastructures placed on top of sophisticated base isolators that act as giant shock absorbers for entire buildings. We rely on satellite monitoring, advanced seismographs, and incredibly strict building codes designed to withstand the Earth's fury. But no matter how advanced we become, the 1556 Shanxi earthquake stands as a permanent, deeply humbling reminder of human vulnerability. It is a historical monument to the sheer, unstoppable power of the planet we live on, and the absolute necessity of respecting our geological realities. The 830,000 souls lost in the loess soil of Shanxi changed the way humanity builds, lives, and survives. I know that digging into this kind of topic can be tough, because this is undeniably heavy history. But looking back at the darkest days of our past isn't just about dwelling on the tragedy. Understanding these immense natural disasters, the geological mechanics of how they happen, and the architectural flaws that made them so devastating is absolutely crucial to figuring out how we can engineer a safer future for everyone on this planet. Before you head out today, I have a question for you. Did you actually know about the 1556 Shanxi earthquake before clicking on this video? Or, like so many of us, were you only taught about famous Western events like the burial of Pompeii or the San Francisco earthquake in school? I'm really curious to read about your experiences, so please let me know down in the comments. If you want to continue supporting deep dives into history and science like this one, taking a second to make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel is the absolute best way to help us out. Thanks for exploring the past with me. I'll see you over there.